Hello and welcome to Batched. I'm your host, Paul James. Today I'm joined by the coffee-drinking Matto Phillips. How's things, mate?
It is tea.
Oh, close enough.
It's too late. It's too late for coffee. If I drink coffee now, probably just stay up till 7 the next morning and go to work.
I mean, there's pros and cons to that. That's a lot of gaming you can do at that time.
Yeah, but there are more massive cons now.
Well, yeah.
If I was a young whippersnapper, sure, why not? I'd do it.
What's the latest you've been played a game to these days in the adult life?
2 o'clock, and that was about a couple of months ago.
Oh, what game was that?
That was Elden Ring.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I said it once ago. I went. I was like, I'll just play it for a little bit. That was at 10 o'clock, and then I thought, what's the time? Looked around. It was 2 o'clock in the morning. I thought, oh shit, I've passed my bedtime.
It's got away from me a little bit. Yeah, I think I've done I think in the last 12 months, I think I've gone as late as 3 or 4 a.m. and I've probably done it 2 or 3 times. I'm thinking about maybe doing it sometime soon with Final Fantasy Rebirth so I can get it kind of finished. Because I'm just going completionist about everything. But more on that when we get to updates in, a week from now? What's the day?
Next week?
Yeah, next week. All right, so we're talking today about a bunch of new studios that have kind of sprung up in the last couple... Well, there's 2 in the last week or so. But I guess there's kind of a pattern of it going on, and so we could kind of... I don't know, wade through the topic a little bit and explore all the different things that could possibly come from this sort of stuff. So I guess the two studios in question that have popped up, I guess the common thing across the board is the fact that they're kind of helmed by people who are well known within the industry, or they've got a history with a really iconic studio or something like that. So the first one is Giant Skull, which comes from Stig Asmussen, who he worked on the Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor games, but also goes back to his days, I think, where people kind of first came to know of him with his work on God of War 3 as the head of God of War 3. The other one that's kind of popped up is a studio with, not as many crazy high-profile names, but Empty Vessel, which is a team that there's a whole bunch of id, Naughty Dog, Activision people behind it, but also, I guess, notably for people who really love their kind of heavy music in games. Mick Gordon seems to be a part of it as well, composer of Doom 2016 and Doom Eternal, but not the soundtrack and parts of Doom.
We say part of Eternal, not full.
Yeah,
not fully Eternal.
He was done dirty by Bethesda there, from what it seems. So anyway, I guess there's a bit of talent clearly on both sides. Now this, as I mentioned, is kind of one of a string of these sorts of stories that we've been seeing over the course of the last couple of years. But to get kind of 2 potentially big ones in a week, I guess, raises some questions. I guess, are you expecting to see more of this as we kind of see the growing financial crisis in the world continue? We hear all about these AAAs and the fact that they're sacking so many people. Are we expecting to just kind of see more and more of this sort of stuff? And if so, how successful can they be?
The answer to your first question is yes. I feel like there's going to be more, because I sort of feel like not many game developers will want to go work at Xbox anymore, or PlayStation, only because job security is no longer a thing at those places, as we have seen in the past 2 months.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that funny joke where you see the picture of how many days since a game's layoff, and it just had a 0.
-1.
Just replacing it with a 0. And you're like, oh, geez, just stop. But how successful, that depends.
Yeah, I think it
just depends on where the developers came from, because that always seems to be the big thing. If you said, former developers of Naughty Dog, everyone will go, ooh. Or The Last of Us, everyone goes, I like The Last of Us. And then they'll say to go, it just looks like The Last of Us. But it's not The Last of Us. It looks like The Last of Us, but it's not.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird, messy one. I think, actually, I guess I'll kind of slightly push on the job security one. I think we've had these giant layoffs, especially at a lot of the big guys, and I don't know if we're necessarily going to see more of it now from them. I feel like they've gone real hard and culled everything back. And I think if you were to end up getting a job at any of the the big first party studios in particular now, but probably it probably extends to most of the big AAAs, assuming they've already had layoffs. I think if you get a job at this point there, you're probably okay for a while. I think. I don't know. I feel like there was
You
kind of
just
a
hope.
really hard swing of the axe, and now it's kind of there's probably some degree of security. But if you're at a team who maybe hasn't had any redundancies yet, that might be a pause for concern. I mean, I think about the PlayStation 1, and we obviously heard about the layoffs recently, and it was kind of Naughty Dog, Insomniac, and then they killed off London studio. Oh, and sorry, and they laid off a few people from Gorilla as well. But there's a whole lot of studios. I think Sucker Punch, I think, as one example, and a whole range of other PlayStation studios where I'm like, nothing apparently has happened there yet. And I'm like, well, when's that shoe going to drop? Because it feels like that's only a matter of time. Or are they just dodging a bullet because maybe when it comes to Ghost of Tsushima 2, they're kind of at a real key point right now where you can't really afford to sack people? I don't know. There could be circumstances with them or other studios, but yeah, I feel like if you haven't had layoffs at the moment, then it's probably only a matter of time. But yeah, when it comes to, I guess, will we see more of them? I totally agree with you. Yeah, we're going to see heaps of this sort of thing. Can they be successful? I think it probably depends on who the people are, because, and I guess
Yes.
a really prominent example for people when it comes to this sort of thing is the Callisto Protocol, which was Striking Distance Studios. They got funded by Krafton, which is the company at the head of kind of PUBG and all that. Game was kind of meant to be in the PUBG universe, and then it kind of got further and further away from that as time went on. I think there was just kind of some little references to it, but like it was headed by Glenn Schofield, who was the creator of Dead Space in the first place. Absolutely knew the franchise inside and out. He was the person totally responsible for it. Went to go spin up a new IP. Very inspired by Dead Space, and then it was like a
It
seven.
wasn't Dead Space.
It was like a 7.5, kind of across the board in most people's eyes. And the studio, like they threw a ton of money at it. I think that you probably had and I guess again financial situation was different, but you had a giant publishers going, all right, that's a lot of talent there. We'll just throw millions at you, and they did. And now they're millions in debt because, or they've lost millions of dollars because the game didn't sell or the game wasn't as good as what it should have been. All those sorts of things. So I think it's going to be really important who the people are, how big they plan on being as a studio, and how much money they perhaps intend to spend. And if you're partnering up with a AAA publisher of some sort, you're going to need to have those conversations anyway. So I think the budget's going to be a pretty key part of it. And it makes me interested to see like Stig these days does big games, from God of War 3 all the way through to both those Respawn games. He was working on some sort of apparently like sci-fi IP at Sony Santa Monica before that got cancelled. There was a big gap in time between God of War Ascension and then God of War 2018, and somewhere along the way he was working on some other IP that they ended up scrapping, and then he left. And went and did Star Wars, an even bigger sci-fi IP. But yeah, I think there's probably a little bit to be said about who the people are, because I think like you can advertise, hey, I worked at Naughty Dog or I worked at such and such, but like you could be just the programmer that like a low-level junior programmer that worked.
You could have just been the cleaner
Yeah.
at Naughty Dog and just said, "Hey, I worked at Naughty Dog," and sanitation. That's what you did.
Exactly. So there's a whole bunch of, I think, extra conditions on it. It's more about like who these people are specifically. I think makes a big deal.
I think if one was run by said, "Hi, I'm Don Matrick," I think it would go out of business in the next 2 days.
Yeah.
If it was Don.
So
Or if it was Jim Ryan, it would be all those diehard fans, and then you got everyone else saying, "Nah, go away, Jim."
exactly. So it's, I don't know. It's a weird sort of situation. I think there's a lot of extra variables in there. I think of Wildflower Interactive, which is another newish team. Now they haven't announced any projects yet, but that's got ex Naughty Dog people. But I think they were, in that case, they were pretty notable ex Naughty Dog people. I have to kind of double check that off the top of my head, because there's a fair few teams that have been spun up by ex Naughty Dog people at the moment. So where are we?
Was it the security man?
Scrolling through a list. Definitely wasn't just the security guy. But Oh, Bruce Straley, who was like one of the absolute keys of The Last of Us. Him and Neil Druckmann were kind of the two head honchos of the whole thing. But part of the thing is making something you haven't played before. I'm like, oh, we've heard that a lot before too. So, there's a lot of big talk. I'm just hoping that, I guess whoever these publishers are that work with them, and I'm hoping that maybe the current financial situation has a bit to do with it, but I'm hoping that there's a little bit of restraint, that they don't go too crazy. They don't go, sign them up for, here, make a $300 million game, and we hope it, returns money, because there's not many teams that can do that these days. And even some of those teams who've historically been able to make those sorts of crazy dollars have increasingly small margins now. The Last of Us Part 2, for all its acclaim, sold only about 10 or 11, sorry, I say only, but like 10 or 11 million copies when it came out, versus about 25 to 30 million copies of The Last of Us, the original, or Part 1. So I'm sure, probably nowhere near as profitable, despite the acclaim and awards and whatnot. So there's, I think budget's kind of the key thing. And you probably need then the right people who've really demonstrated, like they're the studio heads that are leaving and kind of doing this stuff, because otherwise I think it's too risky still. Thoughts?
Yeah, but I think also as well, you don't have to make a big game.
Yeah.
There have been studios out there too. They've proved it. You don't need to make a massive game. You just need to make a good game. I mean, you can have a look. Indie game, Dredge. It's a good game. It's not a big world, but it's a good game. And you got Horizon, Forbidden West. Good game, but let's be honest, that world, it's too big. It's just massive.
Well,
Same with Red Dead 2. As much as I love Red Dead 2, it's a big world and I just can't be bothered riding my horse everywhere. Even though I can fast travel.
Yeah, and
that option.
There'll always be the place for those big AAAs, and obviously, GTA 6 is going to come out next year and fit that mold. Monster Hunter Wilds is going to come out and fit that mold. There's a place for those sort of things, but they're also the ones that they're sure winners. Horizon probably still fits in that boat too.
Monster Hunter as well, like the worlds you're in, they're not that big, especially with Monster Hunter World.
Oh yeah,
it's big enough. And you just know where places are.
Actually, it's a good point, because it can feel pretty small when all of a sudden you've got a Nergigante or something coming after you.
Or suddenly
it feels pretty small.
like, get the hell out of here. Then it just follows you like, oh shit, I can't go anywhere. I can't hide.
Good times.
Yes.
So actually, I'm glad you pushed back on that one. Pretty good point, actually. Yeah, I think your point though is a good one. I think the size of the world, the size of the game is probably a big factor here. There's still a place for your 50+ hour, epic and giant worlds and those sort of things, but I feel like we're at a point where games are going to start trending back the other way again, where they're going to head more towards that PS3, Xbox 360 sort of era where they're shorter. And again, there were still some long games. I think of Borderlands, and I think of, but yeah,
yes.
These games, and I think about The Last of Us, the original one, being a 10-ish. I think it was about 10-ish hour long game.
Roughly about 10,
depending on how you played, whether you're any good, that sort of thing. 10 to 12 maybe. Becoming like 25 with the sequel. I'm like, no, we don't need.
Really?
Yeah, Last of Us Part 2.
Wow.
Yeah, like double length.
That's
of the
a big
original.
jump.
And it just does it well. I mean, Last of Us Part 2 is brilliant, but like they don't need to be that big. The spaces you need to get, like, they don't need to be that huge. And I think as soon as you start paring that down, then naturally your costs come down as well. So I think if these teams are smart, they'll pare back the size a little bit. It makes it more appealing for a publisher because it feels like it's a lesser risk. But then you've got these incredibly talented people behind it that go on and make a potential Game of the Year contender, and boom, you're rolling in it. Still not a guarantee though, because I guess another example is, and we discussed them last week, was Ascendant Studios and Immortals of Avium, which is a small game. I think it's probably good, from my understanding, is maybe it's about 8 hours to kind of push through. It's a first-person shooter. It's very kind of linear in that sort of sense. It sounds like it still costs too much, but like it's a good length, and yet didn't sell. So there's risks. Regardless, there'll always be some winners and losers, but a good starting point is probably getting those games shorter. Any other
I
thoughts
agree.
or teams that you kind of seen bubble up? Any thoughts specifically on these two teams that have popped up?
I think it's going to be interesting to see the one, I forget what, the Mick Gordon one. Because, like you said, you got id, Activision, Naughty Dog. I just kind of scratched my head and going, what the hell would they make? Would
It's an
they
interesting
make a
mix.
first person shooter? Would they make a third person adventure? Because
Um,
Activision can do both. Naughty Dog is your third person, and id, you just shoot them up. Maybe, I don't know what the hell they would do. Maybe they just make a fighter. Just throw a spatter in the works. Just throw or a racer. Oh, a racer would be good.
that'd be interesting. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. Like it's definitely a weird one. There's a lot of different possibilities. Yeah, from the perspective to how violent is this thing to like there's a range of different sort of, and again all the size and stuff we've already discussed. But I mean, I guess as someone who's been a fan of Stig for a long time, he's probably the one of those two that I'm most keen to see kind of be successful, but also I guess to probably play what the game is, and that's not to have a crack at the rest of the talent there because it doesn't state who these Naughty Dog people are, doesn't state who these id people are, but I like id games, I like Naughty Dog
Naughty
games,
Dog. Activision is
and Mick Gordon's a gun.
yeah. Oh yes.
So
Everyone just goes. If you're gonna go, some people go play games. Other people just go listen to Mick Gordon music.
as well they should. So
Because it actually works within that environment, in whatever they do.
yeah. So when I think through like the history, I think I kind of steer towards more what Giant Skull's doing, but I got no real concerns about the other one. And then it really just depends on. Well, actually, sorry. I guess when it comes to the Giant Skull one, they're saying the team is planning a AAA single-player focused action adventure utilizing Unreal Engine 5. So
That doesn't really tell you anything.
well, it gives you a little
But
bit.
usually, I just don't understand why they just have to put in Unreal Engine 5. Everyone's just going to go, ooh, it's going to be good. It's like, yes,
Well,
it's going to look good.
May not be good.
But may not. That's the other question that will be hopefully answered when we don't know.
Yeah, I feel like
a 5-year turnaround. Is it going to be a 2-year turnaround?
and there's another one. Like that's the other part of
Who
it too.
knows?
Is like the length of time it's taking to develop a game is blowing right out as well. So not only there's the size thing of the PS3 era that we'd like to get back to, but also back in that time, I think about. And Uncharted's a good example. But again, Naughty Dog was kind of at the peak of its powers. But like the gap between Uncharted 1 and 2 was 2 years. Between 2 and 3 was 2 years. Between 3 and The Last of Us was 18 months.
Wasn't that big? Yeah, it was nothing.
Yeah, it was end of 2011 to then May or June of 2013. So
And you can say the same about the Mass Effect games too. Like,
07
I can't remember.
to no 06
Like
to
2009?
09
9,
no
10?
10.
Then
Yeah,
12 or
I
something.
think there was the bigger gap between 1 and 2, but then the gap between 2 and 3 was like 2 years. And these are giant games, giant RPGs in those cases. Like, yeah,
And also Gears of War.
Gears was doing it.
One, and then it's between what 4 and 5, or 5 and now. What's it been? 5 years, almost 6.
Yeah, There's some. I mean, look, we've seen reports they are lending their servers to other teams within Xbox, so I'm sure that's a factor. But yeah, it's been a long time to say nothing. He's hoping that changes in June, but we'll wait and see. Any other thoughts, I guess, on this pattern that we're seeing starting to occur?
Well, hopefully, if there's more studios, great, because then they can go rub it in, Xbox, PlayStation's face and go, hey, you could have had this, and you didn't, because it's not in your what would say PlayStation's gaming style. I call it, because it is not a third-person game where their main character's parents are dead, which is in pretty much all. If you look at it, Spider-Man, parents are dead. Horizon, dead parents. Last of Us, dead parents.
Dead children.
God of War, dead family, same thing.
Yeah.
And so on, and so on. Probably Days Gone, haven't played it, but I'm pretty sure parents, dead.
So you watch if Stig's AAA single player focused action adventure ends up having a dead family member in it, PlayStation's going to buy them. But also, like, that is a thing in here. So I think about what's gone on, and I think about PlayStation specifically because we've obviously seen Microsoft kind of go Bethesda buy and Activision buy, and like they're just grabbing big publishers. Whereas you think about what PlayStation did, and they did target like individual studios, and most of them were studios so far that haven't actually put out a game yet.
Or
except for Bungie.
A big mess. Yeah, that's just a mess.
Yeah, but you probably take it because the pedigree is there, and once they get their act together again, they'll be a force. The talent's the talent. So, but yeah, I think about them, and like they were picking up teams at this really early stage. They hadn't put out a game, but maybe they saw what they were working on, liked the potential, and picked them up. And I wonder if in this kind of climate, where these teams might be really cheap to acquire, that maybe the likes of PlayStation and Xbox and other third parties, look to pair up with these companies in kind of a anyway, like PlayStation for years, and this goes back to like their early days, they would exclusively work with them. I think about Sucker Punch as an example, where they put out 3 Sly games. They put out the first Infamous, and then just I think before the second or just after the second came out, they finally bought them. And that was kind of the story with a lot of PlayStation's kind of studios for the longest time, is they kind of worked as a partner for ages, and then finally bought them. Even Housemarque, when they got picked up the other year, they'd made so many exclusive PlayStation games prior to that point. So I'm wondering if, whereas the model's changed a little bit now, it's kind of like, okay, we've agreed to something. Hey, we like what you're doing. Come join the family. I wonder if there'd be more of that sort of stuff from PlayStation and other companies out there where they go, okay, we like this. This is way cheaper than any other scenario where we pick up a team. Let's grab them, pay up, I don't know, $50 million, buy the studio. We're good. Rather than spending billions or hundreds of millions or whatever the case happen to be.
But this also depends too. Do the owners want to be under PlayStation's wing too? Because
or whoever it is,
like,
but yeah.
Because at the moment, like if you look at the moment, it's not ideal.
Yeah.
And we don't know if it's going to get worse or not either, because we're only in March, and at least there was a period within about 2-week period, there was like layoffs every day.
Yeah.
For a 2-week period, just like more and more and more, and Jeff Keighley's just there going, "Hey, look at this AI smell-o-vision." I thought, Jesus Christ, Jeff, and like, oh, Toys for Bob is now independent. Like, Jeff, Sony just laid off 900 people, and you're there talking about Toys for Bob going independent.
I'm sure with his AI sniffer, it was probably a scheduled post, but like at that point, and
no, I don't think it wasn't even. They asked, like, the company said, "Did you ask for their sponsorship?" He's like, "No, he just did it himself."
Oh yeah, but he might have still scheduled it. I don't know.
Yes, but still, it's like bad timing.
But when that happened, he should have then gone out. Hey guys, sorry, it was a scheduled post. My mistake. Anyway.
Maybe they took his phone away after. Like, right, Jeff, give me
phone. That dickhead.
No more. Okay, here you go. Toys for Bob's is independent. All right, Jeff, give it back.
Yeah, we'll see. All right. Yeah. Any other thoughts at all?
No.
All right.
Just hopefully they make some good games.
Yeah.
Even make some good indie games. I don't care. Give me an indie game by some big AAA developer, and I will buy it. Even if it's a fishing game.
Let's get more Helldivers.
Yes.
We joked about it on the show, and then it became a reality.
Well, for one, but still, I find it funny. I find it funny because it was just like, no way, it's real. Well, they're looking. I don't know if we'll talking about it on or off air, but we were Googling.
Yeah, we did Google kind of Helldivers flags, and then one got delivered to my doorstep. Thank you very much, PlayStation Australia, including I can't remember. Yeah.
Oh, you got a cape as well? No way. That is brilliant.
So they did a pretty good job. All right, well, on that note, we'll wrap things up there. Arrowhead, maybe the next acquisition for PlayStation. If you enjoyed that episode, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. All the buttons down below. Hit the notification bell. That way you're alerted to every new video the moment it goes live. Visit the website, player2.net.au, where there's reviews and a whole bunch of stuff going up there all the time. There's a whole range of kind of February, March sort of games that we're still providing coverage for. We're about to hit a bit of a quiet spot when it comes to new releases come April, and I'm really excited for that. But there'll still be content coming semi-regularly, so make sure to check all that stuff out. Visit the Patreon, early access, lower tiers, higher tiers, multi-episode exclusives, and finally, there's Twitter. Matto
Matto_Phil.
Paul James Games for myself. The website is player2au, and until next week, go start up a studio. You might make big money. Could work for you at this point.
Or just start a scam and see if anyone would buy it.
Well, that was the day before, right?
Oh, that was a big scam. That didn't go well though.
Well, I think they made their money.
And ran away.
They convinced a few people. Anyway, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you next week for updates. I think we've worked out.
Yes.
Maybe.
I believe so.
We'll see. See you guys.
We don't know.